This plenary session is ensuring access for all to the 2023 and 2024 eclipses. When we were contemplating the order of all of this, of this session, or of all of these sessions, we thought we at first really wanted to have this session be first, because it's important as for everybody, educators and community organizers and tourism providers. What?
Still nothing.
They're still not getting it? Okay. Say it all again. It's in my head. Oh, wait, someone can hear. Okay, so maybe it's not just us. All right, fabulous. So that is not going to repeat. So, but it's important for everyone who is in any way organizing eclipse related content or events or experiences to look at this so that the maximum number of people can have the experience and have it safely. Well, what that means though is looking at this through a lens of inclusion. So it would have been useful in a certain sense to be able to have started off our conference with this topic. However, we have a number of additional educators who came here specifically on Saturday, both here and on Zoom, who were teaching on Friday. So we wanted to make sure that they had access to this as well. So in a certain sense, as you hear these presentations, please think about looking backward over the course of the last couple of days and applying what you hear here in this session to everything that you've heard and everything that you will be planning going forward. And for that, from that, I'm going to ask Allyson Bieryla to kick us off here.
Okay, great. Can you hear me over there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. All right. So thank you so much for having me. I'm sad I can't be there in person. I was actually in Albuquerque earlier in the week, but I had to race back to a wedding that starts in about just over an hour. So I have to dart out as soon as this is done. But I want to take this opportunity to tell you about a project that I've been working on with my collaborators listed here. Soleil Hyman, who's a now graduate student at the University of Arizona. She's done a tremendous amount of work on this project. Wanda Diaz-Merced is a blind astronomer, so she's collaborated with us, especially in the early design of this. And Daniel Davis really helped early on with the first prototype and helping us with the design aspect. So the light sound is, let's see how there we go. So light sound is a sonification tool. So it basically takes data and converts, in this case, light to sound. So we designed it with the idea of making a tool for the blind and low vision community. And so for those that are interested, this is the schematic of how it kind of works. So we have the circle, hopefully you can see my pointer, but the circle floorboard is a microcontroller. So that's where the simple program lives that takes the data and converts it to sound. There's a very high dynamic range light sensor that can handle the really large dynamic range from bright sunlight to full total eclipse. And then we have this MIDI board, which is what takes the data and we map it to an instrument. So the brightest sunlight we map to a flute sound, lower mid-range is a kind of a clarinet sound, and then it goes to a low clicking sound. And it has an audio output, so you can output it to headphones or you can output it to a speaker, depending on how you want to use the device. And it runs either off a 9-volt battery or we can connect it to a computer and get power that way. And the cool thing is if you connect it to a computer, you can also collect the data and use it to sonify the data later or, do some analysis with the data. Everything's open source. I'll give you the links later, but all the code, the instructions in English and Spanish, and we're converting them to French as well, since we go through parts of Canada. And you can find that all online. So hopefully this sound will work. I did share the sound. So this is going to give you an idea of what the eclipse would sound like in a sped up version. So the sensor is the little blue square here. So as this eclipses it, we can kind of pretend like we're experiencing an eclipse real quick. And it's like really low clicking. I don't know if you can hear it. And then we come out of eclipse. So we had this first prototype here, which we've improved greatly upon now at the 2017 Eclipse. So we had 3 devices across the path. I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and this is Wanda Diaz Merced right here. She was in South Africa with her students. And so I streamed the sound on the internet. So her students and others around the world could join and listen in. And then we had 2 devices that were in Kentucky that this is from Morehead State University, where they collected some data. So our prototype worked. We were really excited, but we knew we had a little bit of work to do. So in 2019, 2020, it's around the time when Soleil Hyman joined our group, and she really worked on redesigning some of the sound aspect. And that's when we introduced the MIDI board and were able to get a more pleasant sound. So for 2020, we were able to build a number of devices and send them to Chile and Argentina along the path. And I love to show these 2 images because it really demonstrates kind of how you can use this device. So on the right, there's this young boy holding a single device with headphones on. And so he's having this individual experience and he's taking ownership of his data, and it can be unique to that individual. But you can also, on the left here, we have, La Portada Stadium in La Serena, Chile, which is like thousands of people. And then we have this table up front here, and there's a light sound device on the table connected to its speaker. And so this group of individuals are now having a shared experience with this device. So, one device really can impact an entire event. You don't need hundreds of devices for everybody, but you certainly can have many devices. So we're actively preparing for the 2023 and 2024 eclipses. We've started to build devices. We have funding. We just got some NSF funding, which is super exciting. So we can build 500 or so of these devices. So we've started to build them through various workshops, and we're going to be doing a big workshop in July. So we are going to be donating them free of charge to those that are interested in having some at your Eclipse events. You can scan this QR code. I'll also give the link at the end, and we will contact you and ship it to you. And for those of you that already did this, I will apologize that we're a little slower than we anticipated, but we will get these out. Hopefully by the summer, everything we'll be wrapping up. We're running a bunch of workshops. We're going to UT Austin next week, and then we'll be running one at Harvard in July. So really, these workshops are, multiple. They do multiple things, right? So the individuals taking these workshops are learning soldering skills. Often they're learning circuitry skills, and we're able to use this to build devices to be donated. So this person here on the right is Greg Mace he's actually from UT Austin. He took this workshop back in 2020 when we ran it at the AAS, and now he's actually hosting a workshop next week with us. So it feels like a real circular moment that we're able to do that with him next week with his RU students. We did a workshop back at the last solar eclipse workshop in Rochester, where we introduced this new 3D printed case, which we are super excited about. Thanks to Dan for making that happen. And then last month we were in the University of Arizona. We teamed up with the Time Step initiative. So it's giving minoritized students an opportunity to learn a new skill. So most of these students had never soldered before. So they're learning how to do this skill and put that on their CV. And like I said, next week we'll be at UT Austin, and then in July we'll be at Harvard running a big workshop. So we started with this prototype here. We had 3 in 2017. We had about 100 or so of these for the South American eclipses. And we're really, really excited that we just developed a PCB version of this. So it will drastically reduce so it's a printed circuit board. So now all the wires go away, and now it's just like ... with the soldering. So we will be moving forward, being able to make these much, much quicker. And you'll see the battery now runs off a lithium ion battery. So it's now rechargeable, which we're super excited about. So we haven't started building these yet, but I think our first iteration will be in July at Harvard. So this is the QR codes and the links. So Light Sound, this takes you to the website where, like I said, everything's open source. You can get the code, you can get the 3D prints to make the case. You can get the instructions. You can also request a device there for free if you just want a device. Of course, my contact information. And I'll just say we have a second device called Orchestar, which is similar to the light sound, except it works on color. So now red light is a lower tone and blue light is a higher tone. So this is a really exciting device that we're excited about, where you can actually like reflect the light off of a poster, for instance, like shown in this image, and you can kind of get the color map of the image. So that'll be under development. We're really excited about that in the future. So thank you very much.
Next up, we have Anita O'Brien from Rochester Accessible Adventures.
Thanks, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be a part of this group and be able to stay both days of this event. I'd say coming into this world of solar eclipse is amazing. And the energy, the scientific energy about this phenomenon, as well as the mystical aura that this event holds with it, are just something that really everybody should have a chance to participate in. And so I find that this is a perfect time to think about who is it that we want to invite to our events that we're planning, to our communities. And I think that you'll agree that we want to invite everyone under the sun, as Dan Schneiderman says. We want them to rent our hotel rooms. We want them to rent all of our Airbnbs and rental cars and eat at our restaurants daily and frequently and buy our merchandise. And I have a perfect proposition for you. People with disabilities have a $490 billion disposable income across the United States. As we've learned, there are millions of people that are going to be in the path of totality in its perimeter. I think Michael told us that everyone's within 250-mile drive of something in 2024. And just to give you an idea of some of the cities with regards to numbers of people with disabilities living in those areas or in those communities, that adds up. I'm not the numbers person, Michael, but I will certainly pick your brain for a data chart around people with disabilities along these pathways. And if half of the United States population is going to be able to potentially participate in this, I'll just take a stab at numbers. 490 divided by 2 is $245 billion. Even if you had access to part of $1 billion, wouldn't that be interesting? And I only mention numbers because a lot of you have referenced the importance of that particular bottom line as you're planning these events. But really, it's about the people. And about the people experiencing this amazing event. And disability is everywhere. There are people with disabilities in this room and online with us today. There are people in this room and online that have a family member with a disability. And then you may just know somebody that has a disability. Disability is part of who we are as a human. We're all different in our sameness. So some people have black hair, some people have freckles, some people wear glasses, some people use a wheelchair to ambulate around, some people use a speech board to communicate. Some people like it loud around them and don't. Disability is simply a part of who we are. And when you understand disability from that perspective, I think it becomes a little less intimidating, fearful, whatever that thing that stops us from already being inclusive. And if you think about how you can become better prepared, it's important to consider what perspective you're planning these events from, your own internal voice. So when you see this, where is the problem to be fixed? If this person didn't have a disability, there'd be no problem. There'd be no barrier to access. Or the ways that our communities have built and designed and provide services have created the barrier and the exclusion. So it's important to start first with where you're coming from and your thinking. But I really like that way, the green check mark is, for thinking about planning this experience. Because you know why? I can't fix a diagnosis. I can't fix if someone gets a Parkinson's or MS or spinal cord injury or born with spinal, but I can't do that, but I certainly could put a ramp in over there. Right? So I think that helps you think about, I hope that helps you think about your planning for this particular event. Because really, your role, no matter what you are, educator, traffic controller, science person, you are just to intentionally prepare your event so people who function in a variety of ways can experience that fantastic thing that you're about to guide them through. That's it. It's simple. It's more simple than what I learned this morning about that solar wind that we're going to be experiencing. That just blew my mind. So I'm really happy to help you on something that I find simple. So you're going to have groups of people coming to your event. It's a bit like, I want you to think about it like having people over for dinner. You're going to prepare for them. And one of them's going to be vegan, and one's not going to like tomatoes, and one's probably vegetarian, and then one wants the whole side of the fill in the blank meat product. And you're going to meet them all there. You're going to prepare your house for that group coming over. And they're going to feel that you expected them. That feeling of being expected is inclusion. It's that simple. And so inclusion intentionally preps the area for everyone's experience. And you're going to ask, but what if we don't know about them? You're not going to know every one of those 10,000 that are going to come into your spot, or the 80,000 that's going to fill that stadium. So how in the world are you supposed to prepare in advance? But I believe that we can. So you start with your master planning now, you have 10 months. You put that in the middle. You're going to be thinking about things like facility, parking, restrooms, activities, marketing. And then you're going to overlay that with 5 ways that all of us navigate the world. They're going to navigate your event on 5 simple, I'm going to keep using that word, 5 ways that we navigate, all of us, right? Real quick. Physical functional ability is how we move through space. Am I going to roll across the room? Am I going to walk across the room? Am I going to use an assistive device across the room? How am I going to lift and navigate the tools that you're going to ask me to use to look up into that eclipse? Sensory functional ability. We have a variety of ways that we all experience the world in the sensory way, how we hear, how we see, how we can touch and interpret what we're touching. Do we see it color the same way the next person beside us sees color? How do we process all of the sensory stimulation that we're going to have on the day of these eclipses? Communication functional ability. We all communicate, whether it's verbal, whether it's nonverbal. We also have this thing where we have to pick up cues from each other, and we have to send cues to each other. And we do that in a variety of ways, and sometimes the communication can break down unless we're expecting to meet someone at their way of communication. When we look at disability from a functional ability approach, and we think of intellectual functional ability, well, that's just how we learn and process. How many of you are visual learners? I completely am, even though those models today blew my mind. It was nice to see them blowing my mind, but I am a visual learner, and other people are visual learners, and some people are just not. Just give it to them in a written capacity. And how do we process? You gave me 5 things I was supposed to do when I go into the next room, and I don't remember anything but the first instruction you gave me. That's part of how our brains are working. And how about the ability to pay attention with whatever surroundings we might be engaged in? And the last one is social and emotional. We all have different ways that we cope with stress, experience joy and awe, and understand social norms and the ways that we're supposed to respond, right? And that's it. That's how everyone is going to experience your Eclipse event. So how can you then prepare for people that are going to navigate in different ways? I don't know about you, but we've already learned a ton today and yesterday about all of the tools, like Allyson just told us one really, really cool one. That stuff is already there. I'm not necessarily here curating and creating those pieces, but if you guys are doing that on the science level of things, which is fantastic. But you know that probably in our work of consultation, 80% of what we do has to do with that expectation, that feeling part, that creation of a culture of welcoming in a space. The other 20 is maybe the physical stuff, like diagrams and things like that. But that's important because that's on you to create a welcoming sense for people so that they know that when they come to your experience, that they're going to have this. I'm going to fly through a few tangible things because I want you to see just how easy this is. But there's also going to be some PDFs that you'll be able to download. Great, so you're out in the parking lot, you're going to create additional accessible parking spaces because you're going to expect more than the 2 spaces that your parking lot currently has. You're going to assign a parking attendant to help navigate that and keep control of that so that when you run out of the 4 that you had cleaned off, you can actually add 10 more because here comes people that you invited. You're going to provide parking information in your event promo prior to people arriving so they understand that you're expecting them there. Providing clear signage using multiple types of communication, some with words and pictures all together, right? Communication, you're going to have trained your staff and volunteers to use a variety of communication options. You're going to have people that know American Sign Language scattered throughout your event that already have phone apps downloaded onto their phones and maybe are equipped with pen and paper so that they can communicate right there on the spot. And you're also going to train your staff and volunteers in person first and identity first language because words are powerful and they can be excluding of people, or they can be inclusive. I would highly recommend if you don't know that concept to make sure that you do prior to your event. Your routes of travel, you're going to ensure that they're firm and stable. You're going to rent Moby mats or grass mats for those access areas over terrain that's uneven. You're going to literally try to experience your event prior to the day through those different ways of navigating, those 5 functional abilities. Sensory, you're going to provide and advertise that you're going to have quiet areas and you're going to learn what that means and how to meaningfully give those out to people and let people know about them on the day of the event. I told you I was throwing these at you. Hashtags. You know about camel case hashtags? It's really good because sometimes words get really jumbled when you have 6 of them out in a row with no up and down, capitalizing the first word of each of those. I highly recommend that you look that up. Go ahead and fill in the alt text on any images in any of your social media and flyers. Restrooms get 2. You're going to invite all these people to come and they're going to need to go. So go ahead and get your ADA porta-johns when you're making that order. If you're not too late, make sure they're ADA ones. And if you have an adult changing station, I don't know what that means. Let's make sure that you do. Those are crucial. And if you have any in your hometown anywhere, go ahead and plan your events around those spaces because that already takes care of one of the most necessary things for somebody that you want to stay there for 3 to 5 hours of this experience. Include a variety of methods for experiencing the eclipse. I won't go into those because we've been exposed to them and they will be given to you in some of the resources. Small details, offer microphones, no matter how small or large your group is. Provide a descriptive narrative of how you want to encourage people to experience what they're seeing and feeling and hearing. Have ASL interpreters without people having to ask you for them. And use closed captioning on your videos. And then advertise the heck out of all of this. Just like you call your friend and say, hey, yes, the lasagna is going to be meat-free. You want to tell people that you're doing all of this. that you're expecting them there. And how do you do that? You put it on your flyers, you put it on your websites. That could be one of the first things that you do. You go out into your communities and you find each of you, I would promise, has at least one person with a disability in your community. Many of you have thousands. And so where are they? And how do you find them? Use Google, it's a great tool. Have people with disabilities that join you on your task force. We're 10 months out, you have time. You can have time to anticipate needs because I just told you which needs. Okay. You've got it, it's been put in front of you. And then you're gonna start implementing those solutions first. That's what a lens of inclusion does to your planning. It puts it as a priority and not as an oops factor. Because if you wait until you're really close and there's no more ADA porta-johns, or there's no more sign language interpreters, you should book your sign language interpreters now. Then it feels like an oops, and people will let you know their disappointment. And I can tell you, disappointment around this thing, this phenomenon, is not a word that you ever want to put together, right? So find the every 1% in your community and then invite them 16 times, right? Because they're not sure that you really are expecting them today. So between now and the day, you have to pretty much build that trust and convince them that yes, we do want you there. So I mentioned we have on our website, we have resources that begin delineating all of these types of things, key planning principles, Eclipse activity resources. That's already a growing list. I've already added in Punch after this conference, and I'll be adding in some more to that. But make sure that you follow along with those and intentionally look and keep looking for more and more resources. So I was at a partial eclipse in 2017. My mom was in Blairsville, Georgia, in the corner of Georgia that had the totality, and she sent me her shirts. This is me and my son looking at the bright, bright sky. But the phenomenon is amazing. And I can tell you that every single family wants to experience that joy and that awe. And it's on us. So whatever you're doing, make sure that you start, I'll give you until tomorrow. Start tomorrow with making every eclipse that's coming up between now and 2095 a totally inclusive eclipse. And we're here to help. Thank you.
You can imagine those of us in the Rochester area feel so incredibly confident in large part due to the fact that Anita's been working with us. You guys too can contact Anita. She did not mean that. She meant it. She's interested in helping everybody, not just in Rochester. And again, you've been blessed that way. So, but you can be too. All right. Next up, we have Cherilynn Morrow again.
Yes, with friends.
With friends. Cherilynn and friends.
My website, yes, please, if you can remind me what it was.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation, inspiring. And while we're getting the website up, I would like to say something we're finding out is that we cannot start those partnerships from scratch. It's to be courageous about identifying partners. So for example, if this planetarium in Boulder was having an astronomy day, they struggled to get the Hispanic population to come out in Boulder. But they found a partner in someone who was arranging hikes for Spanish-speaking people and made a partnership with someone who was already very well connected and trusted in the Hispanic community and made a special effort to invite through her the Hispanic community. You have never seen so many Spanish-speaking people at an event on the University of Colorado campus. As a result of finding that one single person who knew how to invite those folks, right? And so similarly for the blind and low vision learners in Colorado, the Atlas Institute on campus was making relationships with the Colorado Center for the Blind. It wasn't, this wanted to be able, because we have these tactile objects and so on. And again, one key person opened up an avenue and the people knew that it was, they belonged, they should come. Because I think people don't assume that you're going to live up to these standards, right, of inclusivity. But if you really are intending to be inclusive, it's to find those people that help you to recruit, that are trusted already in the community. And I think that's an example that we have here, and that's how I'm going to lead to this concrete example that Jayne and Mr. Aragon will tell us more about. But just before we do that, a couple of other tidbits. This now infamous 3-hole punch, pinhole projector boogie in Spanish. Also, we're in the process of translating this, and that will go up on the web here probably in the next month or so. So that is, and by the way, working with a translator caused us to completely overhaul the back, because the translator didn't know astronomy education. And we hadn't fully done our homework. We only really vetted with a whole panoply of astronomy educators, and we all knew what to do. But this Spanish translator, she was courageous, and she said, this doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, I'm looking at the square and triangle, and didn't make, right? And she was courageous, and she said, I don't get it. It's a great translation between Spanish and English, it's wonderful, but I don't get it in either language. And we realized that adults who are not used to teaching astronomy, Girl Scout troop leaders, other people for whom astronomy couldn't follow our directions very well. And so before we went to press on 100,000 of these, we actually overhauled the back entirely because of the Spanish language translation process. Right, so that effort to be inclusive made a big difference to the quality of this product for everyone. Those of you who have seen these cards, I guess what I'd like to do is go out to, this is our main webpage for the Science and Outreach. Go to the Outreach tab again. Go to Outreach Products. That's your key. Boom. Yes. And that's where you'll find the pinhole projection, and when it's in Spanish, it will be right there in that same place. These punch team cards, of course, are meant to demonstrate inclusivity. Right? And hundreds of people are making the punch mission happen. Not 18. But each one of these people has been willing to serve as a kind of role model and to help people see themselves participating in a NASA space mission and participating in some watching and observing. So if we scroll down, I did this in the last session, I went into those sites. Right there is another piece of breadcrumb for you, monthly one-page newsletters. This is for our, if you can click on that top link, there you have, we started in November. And if you want breadcrumbs to us, this website and coming, if we could go to the latest issue of this. And many of you already know, and I'm thinking of the online people who have just tuned in maybe for this session, we'll have a 3D print downloadable of the petroglyph, Taco, quote, Eclipse petroglyph, and we have thermoform. And again, if there are any others of you, we had a really nice exchange up there during the breakout session. And we really want to put those tactiles, and we have groups of them available in the hands of people who will use them to help their events become more inclusive. This is our newsletter, our most recent one. There are single copies of it, one pager each month comes out, and you can keep track of what we have available for the broader community. And this issue was fairly well devoted to this Sun Fun event at the Pueblo of Acoma and the Haku Community Academy, where the 8th graders helped us bring these submushroom types of things to their community. And I'd like to introduce, we have 2 slots, right? So I'm gonna, like, these guys are gonna just fill that out, and we'll just do it all at once, all right? Good. I want to say that this little card here, this is create your own card after you've made use of these punch team cards, right? So he said, my favorite animal is a peacock. He interacted with her parents for quite a bit of time to say, well, what are the attributes of a peacock that help me be a good person? And it was a family conversation that got excited around that. And what was that? So she decided that she was smart, colorful, and strong. And she walked away with that kind of feeling of identity as a result of filling out her own team card and getting on the punch team and earning her punch button. right, in the process. And so she inspired her parents, then picked up the team cards, both parents and the grandmother. All filled out their punch team cards, and it became a conversation among the family about, well, what are my adjectives to describe myself? What is my animal, and what is this, right? And so we encourage, the way we're connecting this to eclipses is through the punch mission, right, which is studying their pronoun. So I want to, and this is Christine's grandmother here. We had, as I showed earlier, we had a beautiful comments have you been sun watching today over the telescope? Thank you to the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science for providing that sun watching opportunity associated with this one. Yeah. So I'd like to introduce now the duo in any way that you will improvise this. But Mr. Aragon, because we have this up here now, I wonder if you could speak to how that was for the community and also what you intend to do for the Pueblo of Acoma related to where are you going to be, what are you going to be doing, what does it mean to you to do it for the Pueblo of Acoma given the coming eclipse?
We can reiterate, I get it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'll reiterate, it's okay.
All right, very good.
I guess I'm just wanted to explain about the mic. On Wednesday at the Hispanic Cultural Center, I was asked to talk a little bit about our work with the Punch program. And at that time, I said, well, for me to talk to you about something that we're trying to do with our people back home, I'd rather not use that. I've always been told by my elders that speaking through a machine like that is not good. It's not coming from the heart, it's not coming from the mind, it's not coming from you personally. So if that's how you want to relate to your audience, don't use mic. And I know there's a few of us here that know that this is true, coming from a lot of our Native American tribes. We don't do that. Well, somebody the other night told me there's another culture that does this all the time, not use a mic. And he said that culture is the culture of all those people that sing in opera. They don't use mics. And they do perfectly well. So he said, so you're kind of like maybe that, opera singer. You're able to maybe project the voice a little bit. And I guess maybe to tell you what we're doing with my tribe, it seems okay that it is from my heart, that what we've been doing with them. So anyway, before I forget, Kaita wa hapa tu extra yasha. Wa shina man. Hia aisi wa. Tu ni jam ni hangam yaka washed. Ako mersuta. I just said, hello, how is everybody? And then I said, who I am. My Native American name, my birth name, it actually comes through a little ceremony that we have in reading the sun. It's Hia. Well, it's just the formal way of saying it. So Hia. And then I gave my mother's clan because we're matrilineal. We're Zuni Eagle clan. That's my mom. And then my father's clan, which is a more not as major as my mom's clan. I'm a child of my father's clan. Yakawa. I'm a corn child. So that way, people who know maybe of my language and other native languages will know who I am. So if you ever look for me back home at the Pueblo of Acoma, then you can ask for me. Oh yeah. Wow, Sudi Kami Handus. Kumitsa. And how we have what? Oh, Yaka what? Gucci and Shaka what? That would be the conversation on maybe how to find me if you were talking carrots to my people. So anyway, a lot of these things are going along the same lines of what this project is about for me. I'm a retired math science teacher. I didn't initially intend to be a teacher per se. And I used to do some teaching in Native American humanities in college as well as some college physics classes and mathematics. I have worked with several different organizations that promote Native American science and engineering. ACES, some of you might be familiar with ACES, American Indian Science and Engineering Society, and also SACNAS, Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. As well as here in New Mexico, a lot of other minority groups. So in my teaching, that was what I did to try and promote the idea of Native American children learning to do things that I guess in Western education would be competitive. Well, let's compete with these other kids coming from other communities. And to do that, then we had to kind of adjust how we looked at educating ourselves in terms of things like this mission, the solar mission. And then relating it in some way, maybe back to Chaco Canyon. That petroglyph that was etched out in 1097, possibly a total solar eclipse at that time. I often imagine how people reacted to that. I made a little comment of that on Wednesday night about it. That if we're all the people that saw this eclipse and not having a smartphone, I don't really have that, or a computer, or a piece of paper, or a pen or a pencil, how could we record that? How could we see that? How could we have done that as a community? We're all in Chaco, we're all members of that community, and we all have to participate in something like that happening. Well, we talk about it, and I told them that Wednesday night that it probably started out as a story. We have to talk story about what we saw, how we saw it, what we remember of it. 4 minutes, maybe 5 at the most. How long is that? Sometimes I can't even remember people that I met, 5 minutes ago. But the point is that we all collectively had to share an experience like that, and then come up with a way of understanding and incorporating it into our own essence. How did I feel about it? And I think that after they decided all of that, then somebody sat down and said, either let's draw it in the sand, or hey, let's get some rocks and chip it out in a bigger rock. And how long did that take? So for us collectively to see an eclipse that's going to happen, maybe in the span of maybe about 4 to 5 minutes, how do we remember that as a collective whole group? So a lot of those ways of how we understand our world, and we teach each other about how to do this thing we call education. That's in a way how I'm trying to involve myself with this particular project about studying the sun. It is something that we all relate to, but all in different ways at different levels. How we learn, how we understand things. It's not just necessarily in a PowerPoint. We don't have that. Maybe we remembered it in a story, in a song, in a prayer, in just talking with one another. And how we remember that maybe in design, in construction, in the clothes we wear, in the designs we put on our clothes. I see all these nice t-shirts from all these different things that you're all trying to remember by putting them on a t-shirt. I wear what I need to remember. I have on my person all the stuff that I need to have. So education and how we relate to it in terms of Native American groups is a little bit different, sometimes in the way Western education teaches it. So I'm trying to work as much as I can with our cross-cultural component committee here to try and make sure that I'm able to be, I guess, at least honest about how they're going to start portraying things that they might relate to Native American ideas. And we don't have all the answers. And that's why we're still learning and still trying to understand and still all the time reinventing ourselves. Everybody does that. You have a family change, you get married, you move, you get another job. All of these things affect how your being is going to be. For us, we've always lived here in the Southwest, especially up on top of Aubele, for the last 2,000 years at least. And we kind of are are good at doing what we've been doing for those millennia. And for whatever reason, it's kept us alive. We've survived. We're still here. And sometimes I have a little argument sometimes with Dr. Morrow and her ancient astronomers. I said, we're not ancient. We're still here. But that's some of the arguments that we have when we discuss some of this stuff. And it's good. I mean, I'm glad that I'm at least really good at my openness about things like that. And I think if she had a bullhorn, she'd be telling stuff. So it's been good to be with you for the last couple of days. I really appreciate all the different insights that you've given me. And I know that there's other ways that we're going to be incorporating a lot of what you guys have taught me in particular, and as well as each other. So thank you very much for being here. And I know I'll be quiet.
And I'm about to introduce Dr. Jayne Aubele, and it's the three of us who've been going out in a bicultural team through the Haku Academy with the 8th grade, and representing the harmony between a NASA science project and the ancient traditions of sun watching, which have been going on for millennia. But we are quick to admit that modern sun watching includes the sun watching going on in the diaspora bubbles in the US Southwest to this day. So what is beautiful about this is that we live in a place where people are in touch for 2,000 years with watching the sun. Most of us are quite removed from our ancestors who were sun watchers. We're all descended from sun watching people, right? All of us. But we're not living where that happened, where our ancestors did that. But East Oregon is. And that makes the Southwest of the US quite a special place to radiate out that way of including both the traditional ongoing way that's been carried for millennia and the new ways. Oh my gosh, cool sonifications and all kinds of new ways to be with the sun and be present with it. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Aubele, she was a person we approached who had a long relationship already with Akumu. That's how outreach has been started on, is because Jayne already had it. I dragged him into it. I've been privileged to work with people here in New Mexico for over 20 years now. And I've been especially privileged to work with this gentleman as a colleague, a mentor, and a friend. I am not an expert. I'm a planetary geologist. I'm not an expert on Native American relationships. So I can't speak as an expert, and I'm still learning. So I just want to give you some sort of forward ideas that I have kind of come to grips with through my experience. First of all, how many of you work with Native American people? Or have worked? Okay. And where?
Down here.
Here. Okay, where else? Yeah.
So Ganondagan, which is an Haudenosaunee group in Western New York, they are on our task force.
Western New York. Where else?
The Cherokee and Southern Illinois one that's relative.
Cherokee. One more. Yeah.
National Park.
Okay. So I'm sure that we all have come to some things in common, but we all would have differences too, because Native Americans are not a monolithic culture. Okay? We tend to think Native American, but especially here in New Mexico, we have 23 different federally recognized nations, and they are nations. They are sovereign nations.
And especially in New Mexico and they have retained their own lands, their culture, in most cases, their language, their religion. And so first, I would say, remember, not a monolithic culture. Each area is different.
The sound just cut out.
But it's probably it's that microphone.
Is my hair still moving? So we're still getting sound. But
Okay.
yes.
Still getting sound.
The mic is moving, which means that Zoom is
Okay.
picking up sound on our end.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Well,
We
Okay.
can hear you.
All right.
Nobody's complaining here.
Okay. So, first of all, not a monolithic culture. Secondly, I would definitely echo what Dr. Morrow said, which is when you want to work with another culture, don't just walk into the situation and say something like, here I am, and I'm going to teach you all about the sun. You want to find a person in that culture who can act as a mentor, a partner to you, and trust that person and listen to them. Let them and the culture guide you to what you teach, how you teach, who you teach. Third, remember, it is a different culture. We forget that sometimes because in modern Native Americans, they watch TV, they have smartphones, they speak English in most cases, but they are a different culture with different experience, different religion, different background, different assumptions. And that would just be my final point. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here. Many of you, I'm sure, have come to the same 4 realizations, but be careful about your assumptions. We come in as white Western scientists, as Anglos in New Mexico, with certain assumptions built in. All kids want a profession. What are you going to be when you grow up? All kids or most kids should go to college. There's a whole ton of assumptions. These students need to know these facts about such and such. And those assumptions may not be correct with that culture. So those are my 4 things that after 20 years I've come to grips with. And I'm sure you all have other ones. Thank you.
Okay, I believe, I'm waiting through punch information. That's all good. Okay, wonderful. So, I think what we've heard, not just in this session, but in most of them, is that there are a variety of ways to meet people where they are as you're providing curated experiences. So I think that we can look at that as a lens for everything. We have one final speaker of our program, so I'm very happy to say that it's Derrick Pitts, who will wake any of us up on an afternoon such as this. Able to leave that on.
I'd be happy to leave us here.
I think we can.
Great, that's fine. Let me find the right direction here. Okay, I'm all good. As it says, engagement and connection with diverse audiences. I'll defer right away to the experts and say, thank you very much for everything you said. What she said, thank you very much. You both really hit the nails right on the head. And much of what I would say is information that you've heard them say, information that you already know, but I'll ask you to remember some things. about working with diverse audiences, and I'll give you an example of things that have happened in the place where I work. While Franklin Institute sees somewhere above 885,000 people a year in visitation, our visitation comes a lot from school audiences and from family audiences that come to visit us. And it's really wonderful that we have so many people that visit us. But something that we noticed about a decade and a half ago was that while we were serving these audiences with additional informal science, supplemental science education, if you will, there was an audience that we were missing, and that audience was the audience that immediately surrounded the museum. So those school visits were schools from out of the city, out of town, in the suburbs, and the families were coming from the same places. So we weren't serving the immediate audience around us, an audience that I would identify as underserved. Now, underserved, of course, is a buzzword that gets used often for African-American audiences, Hispanic audiences. I think of underserved audiences as those audiences, those that don't have access to or don't participate often in these kinds of authentic science experiences or experiences like a science museum. But I also think of it as those in an urban environment that simply don't come to an experience like ours for one reason or another. Either they're too familiar or something like that. You know, how many times have I been to see the Liberty Bell? Can you guess? You already know the answer, right? Once, when I was in elementary school, and I haven't seen it since. So you know how that goes. But the lesson that we learned when we did begin to reach out to the audience immediately surrounding us was exactly as Jayne mentioned. We are the Franklin Institute. We are the 800-pound gorilla in science education. There's no question about that. We're very confident in what we do because we've done a lot of this stuff and we've been successful. That's great and everything, but that doesn't really do very much for developing a relationship. And much of what we've learned is all about understanding who our audience is and developing a relationship with that audience. Earlier this week, the CEO of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, Linda Shore, talked about engaging with diverse audiences. And the three words that she used that were very important, I think, were science capital, science identity, and science agency. And with these terms, what she was talking about is science capital. What science experience do you have? What's your science identity? Do you recognize or see yourself as a scientist? Do you see others that look like you as scientists that allow you to connect with them in a way that allows you to feel as if you could be a scientist too? And science agency, how you can be a scientist, how you can share your experience with others to help them see the world in a more scientific way. And when we think about how we think about Western science and Western science teaching and things like that, often we don't give all of those things to all of these diverse audiences. We don't allow that for all these diverse audiences. So we come at it from the point of view of, I know everything, I'm going to tell you everything you know, just sit back, relax, and absorb it all. We had a very big mistake with that. We ran into a buzzsaw when one of the audiences we wanted to work with said to us in a meeting, we already have a program set up. We already know what we want to do. What we want you to do for us is this. Here's how it'll go. Here's our program, and hopefully there's a way for you to fit in. Oh, I see. And what we walked away with was an education about how we preconceive our audience and how we see ourselves. And that caused us to turn ourselves around completely and think about partnerships and what they really mean. So engagement and partnership, as I said, many of the things you've already heard, but these are the points that come through that I wanted to share with you, many of which you already know. Build community connections for events like this early. Do it early. You can't wait until the last minute for that to happen, because what you need to do is you need to make friends. You need to make friends and you need to build trust. Too often, institutions like ours drop into a community, do the great program, and then disappear again, never to return. So what have you done for the community really, except show yourselves as being idiots? So it's really important that these relationships begin early and begin in earnest, with the intention that you're not only going to build trust, but that the program or the connection is going to be a long-term program in which we will learn something from you. You will help us better understand, and we can then share our resources to achieve the same goals. There are goals that you have. We need to understand and respect your goals. We have goals. We'd like to share our goals with you and see if there's compatibility in a way that we can both get there together. The term that, or the adage that you've already heard, always heard, is a rising tide can lift all boats. Let's put that tide together so all of our boats can go up and play the long game. Play the long game, because in the long game, you'll actually be able to become partners and trust each other and achieve those goals that you're after. Ask potential learning partners what they want to do around this event. How is it that you'd like to do this? When we went to this community, we realized, as we wanted to become partners with them in certain kinds of outdoor activities, community activities they were hosting, we discovered that they already were hosting a network of community events across a number of community centers, and they were looking for us to fill in a particular spot. They had a place for us to be doing something already, and that was the way for us to begin partnering with this community, by allowing them to see that what we had as a product was worthy of the program they already had. So find out what potential learning partners, what they want to do around an event. Ask how you can help them share the event with their community. They already have the network set up. Take advantage of those networks that are there. Ask if and how programming can start well in advance. It's best if you can begin programming well ahead of the big event. Here we have a perfect setup. We have a pre-show and we have the main show. But between now and then, there are opportunities for us to establish a relationship and figure out how we can best work with them. How do your programs flow? What are the elements that make programs in your community successful that may be different from other communities? How can we find that out, understand that, learn that, and work within that framework to help make the program successful? After all, when the elephant comes into the room and tramples all over everything, well, then the program on the elephant's end looks really shabby. So rather than disrupt something that's already working well, why not find out how you can best fit into that? Ask if and how programming can start well in advance so you can learn the ropes. And then work to remove every possible barrier that might prevent sharing authentic science experiences. I'm sure you all do this. I've had great fun in figuring out how to take any kind of science program and make it possible for anybody to do across the panoply of how much money do we have? How much experience do we have? What are the things that keep us from doing this? You know, doing science in an urban area, a community center, is a big challenge. If you're talking about doing an astronomy program in an urban community center, often it might be the situation that they can't do anything in that community at night. Why? Because it's dangerous in the neighborhood at night. So what do? The sun! I'll think of 100 different things to do with the sun, right? That can all tie back to things that are right there in the neighborhood, right in front of you. You know, I said earlier that we used at the 2017 solar eclipse 35 sun spotters. For the last NASA grant-funded program I ran in Philadelphia, before the one that's currently happening across the country, I distributed 40 sun spotters around the city. 40. Wow, great, imagine. And they live at the community centers. So now if you wanted to do something astronomical during the day, boom, there it is, along with all the other things that we can do. So work to remove every possible barrier that might prevent sharing authentic science experiences. And sharing the experience, the concept of sharing the experience is the big thing. Science happens in all of these communities, as I said before. The thing that we're doing with them is that we want to try to do is to try to achieve these goals of helping people connect better with science, be inspired to want to learn more about science. That's our goal. And so in sharing these experiences, whatever they are, whether it's biological, astronomical, environmental, or anything along those lines, we're not only sharing the experience of science and inspiring an interest in science, but we're also building this partnership. And the sharing is the important part. We want to share with you. We ask you to share with us. We would like to be better. You can help us get better by doing that. So we share the experience. And here's an up-close picture of that tent. Be innovative. Be willing to take suggestion from your partners, from your diverse audiences about what things might work well in their audience. So another example of this is I'm not a church-going guy, but I did early in my life. But faith-based organizations are excellent community organizing centers where you'll find frequently youth organizations that are looking for activities and programming to do. Now, being innovative in one sense, working with faith-based organizations connects to the religion part. And being innovative in that sense is figuring out how you can do science in conjunction with whatever the faith is, whatever the religion is, so that you can get around any landmines that anybody might try to build up about this, so that you can accomplish the goal you're trying to accomplish. Because, in fact, we all know that this stuff can go together. It's just that you have to be innovative in how you talk about it and how you work with the partnerships that you develop to allow that to merge and work. So that's worked out really nicely in Philadelphia for a lot of the programs that we've done around astronomy through faith-based organizations. I'm really pleased and proud that we've not let that be a barrier. So all ideas that you've heard before, try to remember them, keep them in mind, build off of these, and hopefully that'll help you to expand your programming. Thank you.